Yeah, I think AI use, and particularly ethical AI use, is not just about the technology. It is a fundamental business responsibility. As I said a moment ago, AI, you can't depend on the tools. It's not the platform's jobs to be ethical. It's your job to be ethical.
Welcome to AI Inclusive, where we discuss how artificial intelligence is shaping the future of business and how we can build a better and more inclusive business landscape. I'm your host, Pallavi Sharma, CMO and founder of Wit Omni AI Marketing. Today we're diving into a critical topic, ethics and bias in AI and how it impacts the future of brand building. Our guest today is Paul Chaney, a seasoned expert in AI ethics, marketing, and the intersection of technology and human values. Paul has written extensively on these topics, and he brings a wealth of knowledge on how businesses can navigate the complex and ethical challenges of AI. So ethics in AI is more than a buzzword. Maybe AI helped me write a little bit of that. So there's some funny words that come up that I see, and I'm like, as a user of AI, I'm like, okay, I wonder where that came from. But honestly, it is more than a buzzword. It's a business imperative. As companies increasingly rely on AI, ensuring these systems are ethical and free from bias is going to be so essential for building a trustworthy brand. And if you look at my background, I used to manage the GE brand globally, and really trust was such a core element of the brand. You lose your customers' trust, you've lost everything. So Paul, has been at the forefront of these discussions. His work highlights the importance of addressing bias and maintaining transparency to build a brand that resonates with today's socially conscious consumer. Paul, can you share a bit more about your background and what drives your passion for AI ethics, particularly in the marketing sphere?
Sure. As to my background, I've been doing digital marketing. We used to call it online marketing back in the day, since before Google. And if you don't know when Google was founded, you'll just have to go Google Google's founding. And you'll see I've been around a long time, but I have done a lot of different things when it comes to marketing. I'm probably, at least in the past, was more known for my social media marketing because I had written some books on those topics, and also business blogging and that kind of thing. Right now, in the last few years, I really focused on B2B writing and editing. As to my interest in this particular topic, I have to explain that, and I'll do it as quickly as I can. I'm a big fan of a guy named Joe Pulizzi, and Joe's the guy who is known as the godfather of content marketing. And Joe, in the last few years, has really gotten into this whole content entrepreneur idea of driving different revenue streams. Well, I have my business, and I do what I do day in and day out, but I was looking at ways that maybe I could add, some revenue. And I tried one idea. It was a newsletter. Didn't really resonate, didn't really work out. And then when ChatGPT came out, and because I'm a geek or a nerd and I'm absolutely fascinated by these technologies, I began to really take a close look at it, began to incorporate its use in my business. And I saw a good many people talking about AI ethics, and a lot of people, marketers, talking about how to use these shiny new toys. What I didn't see was anybody really talking about the intersection of the two, how AI ethics impacts marketing's use, or vice versa, as the case may be. And I thought, well, you know what? Kind of going back to Joe's point about content entrepreneurship, maybe I can do something with that. And I'll be quite frank with you, I wasn't really all that excited about it, at first. But I started a newsletter called the AI Marketing Ethics Digest. I was publishing every couple of weeks, and it was kind of like, this is kind of growing on me. And I will tell you now, after a year of doing this, I am a bit manic about it. I get on a high horse about it because I have come to the understanding that there's great importance in doing what we do as marketers responsibly and ethically, and AI leaves a lot of room for that not to happen if we're not careful.
Exactly. Hear, hear. Yes, I couldn't echo that more. I think it's so important for us as marketers, who are really the voice of, I feel, the brand and the voice of the customer internally, for us to take ethics very, very seriously. Often there's a business imperative to just put something out or make something seem, shinier than it is. And marketing gets pushed to do that. And I myself have had to be a gatekeeper and just say, no, I'm sorry. I'm not putting my name to that. I'm not letting that go out in the world. I get it that you want it done, but not.
I'm a big fan of Seth Godin. I called myself a Godinite. And he wrote what became a cult classic, I think, a book called All Marketers Are Liars, which actually talks about, being authentic and trustworthiness and everything. But you kind of snicker at that a little bit. But, sometimes we do things to meet our goals and stuff. We maybe take some shortcuts, or it's marketing speak, and we overpromise, underdeliver sometimes. So, and with AI, that could be taken to a whole new level, as we probably all know now.
Absolutely. Don't get me started. I myself, as I'm testing out all these tools and technologies, the amount of AI washing going on right now is just insane, because I feel like on a daily basis I'll try out a feature, and often it comes from a platform that's not AI native, and I wish I could get my time back because it was such a useless exercise.
Right.
So I completely hear you. AI decisions can influence everything from consumer behavior to public trust. So getting ethics correct is critical, as we're talking about. So could you give us a take on why ethical AI is so important, especially for brands looking to the future?
Absolutely. I think there's several relevant factors or reasons at play here. And you've already talked about the most important one, and that is brand trust. I mean, if you're a CMO or you're a marketing director or you're a global brand manager, whatever your title was, brand trustworthiness is paramount. And I think ethical AI plays a critical role in maintaining that trust, particularly for two reasons. Number one, people are much more aware about how their data is being used and much more maybe concerned or cautious about it. And people are also becoming more aware that companies are employing the use of AI in marketing, and not just marketing, but other arenas as well. And I don't know that everybody's just necessarily all excited about that. So I think that's the first factor. And speaking of the customer, today's consumers expect brands to act responsibly. And you got to line up with that. And that demands that you be transparent, that you be fair, and that you be responsible in your use of not just AI, I guess, but certainly AI. But then there's another thing. It's kind of the other side of the equation, and that is it's not just about responsibility. There's a strategic advantage, I think, that can be at play as well, and that is if you lead with ethics, you become a brand differentiator in the marketplace, at least potentially. You position yourself as a leader in responsible AI use, a leader in responsible innovation. And what's that going to lead to? I think that can lead to long-term brand value. It can lead to greater customer retention. It can lead to greater customer loyalty. But it really all circles back to trust.
Yeah.
What can we do to make sure our customers, our clients, whatever, trust us?
Yeah, I think recently when we saw both OpenAI and Google doing their launches and then saying, hey, you're going to be able to do all these great things. And then, you race back to your app and, just kidding. It's like months and months later and the features still haven't been rolled out. I'm still waiting for my advanced voice mode on OpenAI. I just keep looking at that little eye with a circle on the top saying advanced mode coming. And, those are really amazing technologies that are being developed. So I personally don't understand why you can't just be upfront and say this is coming soon or whatnot versus making it seem. But the AI races, who am I to know? The valuations of these companies right now
why oversell? And of course, these things are as dumb as they're ever going to be. But the potential is mind-boggling. It already is to me.
It already is.
My use of it is very, very benign compared to somebody in a corporate or an enterprise environment where there's, teams of people working on various and sundry things. I'm a solopreneur, so I just use these tools for myself. And sometimes I am amazed at what they do. And,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy with where things are right now. You don't have to try to impress me with, and maybe, it is a competitive, it's a very competitive marketplace. Everybody's trying to outdo everybody else. And, Meta has now outdone OpenAI, and Gemini's come out with this. And I don't know. It's a race.
Yeah.
Certainly. So
It is.
yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the actual systems, because that's a whole nother ballgame. What are some of the biggest challenges companies face when trying to eliminate bias from the AI systems themselves? As we saw earlier with Google, they're
Right.
over-indexing on the diversity side and showing historical figures, so that's kind of
exactly
in a different direction.
Right, and that's that's certainly a bit of a. I mean, it's to me, it's kind of a humorous example because it's so ridiculous. But I think when you really get down to okay, we got to deal with bias. We got to make sure bias is not in our systems. How do you do that? Well, first of all, it's all about the data, right? And the integrity of the data. And you got to make sure, as a marketing leader, as an IT director, whatever function you serve, you got to make sure that data is free from bias. What does that mean? That means scrutinizing, monitoring, cleaning that data to avoid, perpetuating any bias. Now, how that's done, I don't know. I'm not a data scientist.
We have another guest coming on soon to discuss that in more detail.
Well, then they can handle that question, how you do it, but that's where you got to do it. That's where it starts. And I'm going to use two words they're buzzwords, but they're almost actually like cliches, and that is transparency and accountability. And I can hear the collective groan like, But listen, we have to champion transparency. People have to know that what we do in the decision-making processes of how we're using AI in a marketing perspective or another perspective that is on the level, it's understandable, it's fair. That is how we engender trust. Transparency and trust are conjoined twins in it.
And those topics should be a foundation of business, AI or no AI.
Oh, absolutely. Well, back in the early blogging days, I always used, I used the term transparency, but I said transparency and authenticity, because I felt like blogging was the last form of honest advertising. It ceased to be that. Yeah. But transparency and accountability, being responsible, but also data privacy and security. Now, that is an IT function primarily, right? You got to make sure your data is firewalled, it's locked down so that it is not going to be subject to any kind of data breaches or hacking or attacks or anything like that. And obviously, you've also got to comply with regulatory, entities and things like GDPR and all, CCPA and stuff. But I think, too, it comes down to let's make sure we're also balancing our innovation, our use of AI with ethics. And that just is a principle that we have to adhere to. And that means no shortcuts. We've got to ensure that the drive for innovation is not, we have ethical standards in place about how we handle AI systems, particularly where it concerns the customer and customer interaction. And let me just say this too. You cannot leave it up to the tools or the platforms to decide what responsible use is. Now, that's not to say that some of these platform developers aren't, building in some ethical, requirements or whatever the term might be. Some are, but, I put it this way. AI isn't ethical. You are ethical. You are a human. You have values. You have ethics. The AI doesn't necessarily. So the onus is on you to make sure that responsible use it's up to you. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I could not agree more. There's a lot of people that this podcast intended for who are entrepreneurs or thinking of starting a company or, on their way to scaling a company, and temptation, even if it isn't intentional, but it's just to not prioritize some of these things. Believe you me, these things can come back to bite you. Like, it can take your company down if you are not incorporating these types of things into your practices as you build your company. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen deals go down. I've seen stuff where, because people did not take the precaution up front, the end was not what they had hoped for, the exit. So, it's so critical.
Well, and I think, the technology there's this rush. Like, I think about what's going on in the Bay Area right now. It's just crazy. And one of my acquaintances, I'll call him a friend, his name's Jeremiah Haoyang. He's putting together these meetups, and there's hundreds of people showing up. Yeah, and it's just this mad rush to, again, outdo one another and come up with the shiny newest thing or the latest, mousetrap, whatever. And we can't let the technology get ahead of our responsible use of it. So we got to be sure that we're staying on top of that.
Do you have any examples you can share where bias in AI led to a brand impact, positive or negative?
Yeah, I think a couple. One, well, the negative one is not such a specific example. I have a better one for the positive, but there was a whole bunch of, it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the facial recognition technology was, there was a lot of bias against people of color, against women. I read stories about people being arrested who weren't the guilty party because facial recognition mistook them, and I can imagine even maybe, the governmental levels of things like that, there might be some misuse of it. And it led to a great deal of backlash, right? There was damaged reputations. There was regulatory scrutiny. So I think that's one sort of classic example. On the positive side, and maybe this doesn't have so much to do with bias, but maybe it does. Airbnb has utilized AI to enhance its services. They use predictive search and predictive algorithms regarding pricing to make sure that users get more personalized, competitive booking recommendations. Now, I don't know how much they know about me, but I know the other day when I was looking at some Airbnb listings, it was like, these prices seem a little high to me, so maybe they need to adjust their algorithm a little bit to accommodate Paul Chaney. But there is a use that they have that I'm going to argue on the side of it being positive, but I think you could argue on the negative side as well. They're also using AI to profile customers to assess guest trustworthiness. Now, on the positive side, they want to make sure that their hosts are protected and safe. And so I can understand it from that standpoint, but we're talking about profiling and using AI to profile. So is there a chance that bias could leak into that? Then maybe so. I don't know. But I think the bottom line here, the takeaway really is addressing bias proactively can prevent reputational damage. It can enhance brand value. It can keep you out of trouble, with the regulatory bodies, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, when as a marketer, most of my work is, they're technology companies, but when we started chatting about this particular topic, the profiling, that's a serious consideration, especially as AI applications get, deployed more in government or policing or, things like that. So right now, I don't know. Things are being scrutinized to that same level because I feel like we're just in that honeymoon period still with AI.
Oh, yeah.
Entering the trough soon. Sounds like if you look at the stock market.
Well, I'm still up there in the hype cycle because I love this stuff and I use it every day all the time. I'm just completely amazed at maybe I'm easily impressed, but I'm not down in the trough yet. I mean, maybe
not yet.
Big companies are, but not little old me.
So let's switch gears now and let's look to the future, because part of this podcast really, as as the guests I'm selecting to come on to the podcast and the guests or the audience that I hope to achieve, it's really people who are interested in building a better landscape for all of us, better business landscape. And by that, eventually, better life, et cetera, et cetera. So let's imagine a future, where AI is fully ethical and free of bias. What does that look like for brands? And how do you see it reshaping the business landscape if we do it right?
And I see that, that movie effect where it morphs into the future or whatever. And I hear strains of "We Are the World." No, I'm kidding. Sorry about that. By the way, the word landscape, I absolutely do not use that because that is one of ChatGPT's favorite words, along with delve. That's another one.
So landscape was my word, but delve, definitely. I'm like, where the heck did this word suddenly come from? And it likes to dive into everything all the time. A buzzword I've already made fun of. And yeah.
Right. Well, one day I'm going to sit down and put together a little guide about, things to look for when you're using ChatGPT, like, for writing particularly. Some of the things that it's going to default to, and you've got to be able to, get your way.
When I'm using it to write, I actually ask it, don't use cliches that you tend to use, such as, and then I'll give it a list of words. So.
That's good. Yeah. Well, it is better prompts. You get better results.
Yeah.
So what does this future scape look like? I think it looks like this. And I'm going to this may seem pie in the sky, but we'll go for it.
No, that's what we're doing.
I think brands would make fair and equitable decisions by default, which means more inclusivity, diversity, all of that in its products and services. I think we think about, for example, environmental sustainability, which, let's face it, the use of AI, because of the enormous amounts of energy and I guess carbon, whatever it uses, right? There is an impact environmentally, but let's just think of the concept of environmental sustainability today. That's just a thing, right? We all think about environmental sustainability. Well, I think that in this perfect world we're imagining or envisioning, there is this sense of ethical sustainability, responsible innovation, where that's just the thing. It's the norm. It is a standard expectation. It is not an afterthought, right? I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about fair, equitable. We're talking about driving sustainable, long-term growth. And we're talking about, honestly, we're talking about just doing the right thing because it's the right thing.
Do the right thing, damn it.
That's it. It's the right thing. Yeah.
Why is that so hard?
I'm Gumby, damn it. Now, I'm sorry. Saturday Night Live, back in the day. You just never know where my mind's going to go. I haven't had enough coffee. Actually, I'm not drinking coffee anymore. I'm drinking tea now, and I don't think it has the same effect. But I think that's what I'm talking about. We're talking about something that's just people can trust, and they don't question it because they just know it's going to be done right because we are, as companies, putting their best interests first.
Yeah. Exactly. And in terms of the environment question, I sometimes wonder when I'm using these tools, it gives me so much information that I didn't ask for. I have to constantly tell it, be succinct, be succinct. I wonder what a waste of energy that is and why they choose to give such enormous amounts of output. I don't know.
Right.
So what broader societal changes might we see if more companies adopt ethical AI practices, do you think?
I want to step back for just a minute and let's just talk about what do we mean by ethics? I mean, that is the name of the newsletter. It's marketing ethics. And I went to the dictionary, not ChatGPT. I actually went to the dictionary. And the simple definition, it's standards of right or wrong, right and wrong. It's moral principles. Now you got to ask, well, whose morals are we talking about? But I think universal standards of right or wrong, that's what we're talking about when we think about ethics. And as it applies at a more broad societal level, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's a reduction in discrimination. You think about hiring discrimination. You think about lending discrimination. Maybe I'm wanting to buy a house. Healthcare, maybe discrimination. We're talking about just contributing to a more just and equitable society, to be sort of repeating myself. We're also talking about increasing consumer or public trust in what technology has to offer. I don't know. I think there's a bit of skepticism about that. Maybe there always has been. When you have new things, it takes a while for people to accept them. And I go back to, again, what I said just a moment ago. Ethics and ethical AI as the norm It is just how we do things. It's not, again, an afterthought or the exception.
I hear. I have a feeling your Substack is going to blow up because I think with AI, the focus is entirely on the new tech, and every day there's some mind-blowing app that seems to come out that's genuinely like, OMG. And so the ethics part, it's not there yet.
No, it's not. And let me speak to that for just a second.
It's coming.
Yeah, I think 2025 is the year, I'm hoping. I mean, and, when I jumped into this fray and talking about this, nobody else was. That's one of the reasons I chose this. Nobody else was talking about it. There was not one newsletter. I'm sorry, I'm getting on my high horse. There's not one newsletter out there talking about AI marketing ethics, right? And I just said, there's room for that conversation to be had. And maybe we marketers don't so much care about it right now, but we need to. And, maybe I'm like the movie Pinocchio, the Jiminy Cricket, the little conscience of Pinocchio or something, tapping you on the shoulder saying, are you doing this ethically? Whatever. Yeah. But, it's not there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, I hear you. So when I launched my business and this podcast, that's exactly the way I also approached it. I'm like, what are the things that are important to me? I was getting just increasingly obsessed with AI. I've been a marketer for so many years, so I love discussing business growth and entrepreneurship. And then as a woman of color, just Google what it's like for us out there, and and so the inclusivity part. And so I was like, okay, that's it. That's it. That's the intersection of those three things, and that's my world I'm going to live in right now.
Well, I look at it, and I hope you don't mind me sort of diverging for a moment. I look at it the way I used to believe about social media. I mean, I believe that social media was the great leveler, the great common ground where we could come together and we could talk and we could interface, where companies and brands could sit down with their customers and have a dialogue, and it was fair and equitable. Of course, we know what happened with it, because I guess human nature is so freaking toxic we can't help but let that work its way in, and I became a bit
Paul, can you please tell me how you really feel? How do you really feel about the human race?
I absolutely will. Well, again, and you're probably going to edit this out. It's fine. You have that privilege.
I don't think so.
But I put it this way. There was a song written back in the 80s that most people don't even know about. And the chorus said this: you can show me your sales curve. You can plot my life on your flowchart. That's kind of behavioral marketing, right? But there's just some things that numbers can't measure, matters of the heart. And I always believed, well, I used to, social media was a matter of the heart kind of way of communicating with people. And in that respect, I felt like it could contribute to a more just and equitable society. Well, okay, we see what happened. Well, I feel like, and I'm an idealist. I mean, I am, card carrying. I feel like AI has that potential if we don't screw it up. And you know what, Pallavi, marketers will screw it up if we let ourselves.
If we let it.
We will, because we have these agendas, and it's profit before principle. And I'm sorry, but that's just not what this is all about. And maybe that's why I've camped on this more than anything. It was just sort of in the back of my mind or my heart, and it finally just came to the fore. Okay, I'll stop preaching now. We'll take up an offering at the end of the sermon.
Every time I, have conversations where it sounds like, and obviously from a business perspective, right now we're in the mode where AI is really about cost saving, time saving. That's where the focus is currently, and then eventually it'll get into more revenue growth. But oh my gosh!
By the way, I hope your guests don't mind that I am not a very corporate kind of person.
No.
Polished. I get on.
And the people that I'm like interacting with right now in the AI community, they're like really real. I think everyone's so I was actually going to say to you, I've been having a lot of conversations with people, and people are so burnt out by our current system. They are just done. And so I think that there is going to be kind of a white collar revolution, if you will, where people are like, yeah, we are not going to stand for these old systems anymore.
Right. Well,
And so there's just increasingly, I feel, kind of an outcry to say, hey, we are human beings. We are not robots. Women have to go through certain things in order to give birth and bring life and make sure that life survives. So let's stop making them pretend like they are men. There's so many changes that have to happen even beyond that, right? And so I just have a sense that people are really done with the current system. So I
think there is that. It's a discussion right now, right? Of what is the role AI and technology and these machines play, and then what is the role humans play, and is there room for both? And maybe there'll be a sort of anti-technology movement or something. But anyway, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, well, no, what I was saying earlier is that with AI, if we just let it be another productivity tool, boy, have we missed the mark with this thing,
Boy.
So
It is almost to do an injustice to call what we're seeing, evolving just a tool.
Yeah.
There's so much more. I mean, if you listen to, what's his name, Mustafa Suleiman's TED Talk, you just sit back and go, oh my God, what's coming is so phenomenal.
It's insane.
Yep.
All right. So what are the critical steps businesses need to take now to move forward toward this ideal future? Can you give us some pragmatic steps that folks listening to this podcast can implement starting today?
Yeah, I certainly can. I want to go back to the marketing arena primarily, although not exclusively. I think the first step that marketing folks ought to take is to embed ethics in your marketing strategy. It is a core value. It is, just not an afterthought. It is part and parcel of any campaign you create, anything like that you do. Ethics are embedded in those strategies. And I think that's the first thing. That's underlying. I think also, and this is broader than just marketing, but it involves marketing, is establish an AI ethics council that has stakeholders that represent various branches of or departments in your company. And along with that, establish a code of ethics or ethics policy that governs your use. And in that respect, not so much the council, marketing should be a part of the council, but I think there is room for marketing to have its own version of that ethics policy because of the unique relationship that marketing has with consumers or customers. And it's different, obviously, than HR or IT or any of the others, right? And so I think there's room for marketing to have its own unique kind of policy. I think also training is a very pragmatic thing. You need to train your team on how you're going to use AI ethics and what those principles represent and help them understand the fundamentals of it so everybody can be on the same page. And I think another thing that you've got to do is maintain human oversight. AI can automate all kinds of things, as we well know, but I think there's room for human judgment and intervention. That's the only way you can safeguard this, not going crazy. And like a friend of mine says, AI generates, these LLMs generate, but humans publish. So there has to be that human in the loop. And also I think you've got to be a champion. You've got to advocate for these things, in your organization.
Yeah, those are great tips, and they don't only apply to entrepreneurs. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, this applies to, and it goes beyond marketers, right? Just make it foundational, but really for marketers, you can be the champion within your company because you're kind of you're the brand ambassador, if you will. And so making sure that these things are incorporated from the start is going to ensure the easiest path versus waiting. So making them foundational is so critical. So this has been such a wonderful discussion. I just wanted to ask you if you had any final words of encouragement for those looking to make a positive impact with AI.
Yeah, I think AI use, and particularly ethical AI use, is not just about the technology. It is a fundamental business responsibility. As I said a moment ago, you can't depend on the tools. It's not the platform's jobs to be ethical. It's your job to be ethical. The LLMs, unless they're some platform developers built in, ethical values or moral principles or whatever, LLMs don't have ethics. People do. And that's even true of some marketers, I understand. So it's incumbent upon us to put responsible use on the front burner. I think that is absolutely fundamental. I think from a competitive advantage standpoint, if you put this out front, you say we're being ethical in our approach and we're being transparent in our approach. We're doing things like letting you know how it's being used, and our terms of service aren't some 14-page long legal document. It's easier to understand. And oh, by the way, you get the privilege of opting out, and not only opting out, but consenting to use. I think that's certainly something. But it goes back to, this is just the right thing to do. If you care about your customers at all, this is the right thing to do. Now, technically, start by auditing your systems to make sure that you identify and address any bias that may already be there. Get that council going, develop those ethical codes of conduct or ethical policies. And even more than that, maybe this is a bit philosophical or existential. Thank you very much. Create a culture in your company where an ethical approach to AI isn't an afterthought. It's a core principle. Yeah. It's a core value.
Culture. That is
culture.
So critical.
Culture, yeah, absolutely.
You have to have your culture nailed down at your company, or it's going to run amok.
And it takes time, and it takes training, and it takes this. I love this old adage: tell them what you're going to tell them again, tell them what you told them. You got to keep coming back to it. It's got to be a drum beat until it becomes a heartbeat. And I like that. I'm going to use that. That's good. That's good. Use that.
And it's got to come from senior leadership. I'm sorry. It has to come with senior leadership.
Yes,
so if you're senior leaders, if you're at a company and your senior leaders are not what you would consider ethical, ideal, get out of that company. Don't stay there, because it will come back to it. It starts from the top. I wish it were not all, that black and white, but I think it is. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a comment or two, and let us know in the comments what you would like to explore in the future. Thank you again, Paul, for sharing your insights. This has just been such a wonderful discussion. You're one of the first people, as I started getting more active in the AI community, that I interacted with. You've been such a supporter as I go along and build up this business and also this vision for an inclusive future. Wow. And I really, really thank you for that.
Well, what you're doing with your approach to marketing and incorporating AI, I find just very fascinating. And you're certainly, I'm going to use this cliche, you're on the cutting edge or leading edge of this. And I'm anxious to see where this goes for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm happy to have you on the journey with me.